Should have worn PPE. This is a PC that was donated to me by a friend of mine who did a full system upgrade. It belonged to my friend James from the LAN Party Story series actually, and I was the one who helped him upgrade to the rig that he's on now. Check out that video afterward if you haven't seen it yet. But oftentimes when I help friends and family upgrade or build completely new PCs, they end up donating their old stuff to me because it's a lot less of a hassle than trying to sell it. Also, they know that giving me anything computer related is potentially content for me, so they do be looking out, which I am thankful for. But yeah, this system was built roughly 10 years ago, so it is a bit on the older side, but that doesn't make it completely obsolete. Yet anyway. Let's check this out, clean it up, give it a little refresh, and see what it can still do, right after a quick word from the sponsor of this video. Jawa, the #1 gaming marketplace that makes buying and selling hardware easier without the hassles of scammers and scalpers that are commonly found in other secondhand marketplaces. Looking for PC parts to build your own? They've got it. New to PC gaming and want a complete system ready to go out of the box? They've got that too. Whatever budget you have, there's likely something on Jawa for you. Check out this clean and compact build rocking a 12th gen i5, RX 6600 XT, 16 gigs of RAM, and 1TB SSD. This would be an awesome starter PC with great specs and comes in just over $600. And this is only one of the many listings available on Jawa, so be sure to check them out, especially if you're not comfortable building your own and want a reliable first system built by a vetted seller. From now until the end of the year, Jawa's going to have a ton of flash sales, giveaways, and deals for the holiday season, so be sure to create an account now and subscribe so that you don't miss them. Thanks Jawa for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. Alright, let's take a look at the system and the condition that it's in. Specs wise, there is an i7-4790K in here. It's sitting on an Asus Z97-A motherboard. So this is capable of overclocking, but I think this is one of the more entry level ones, like one more on the budget side. For memory, I know this system has 16 gigabytes, but I don't know what the actual memory specs are, so let's see. It's a 2x8 configuration and it looks like the speed is 2133 CL11. For the power supply, we have a Corsair CX750M, which this one is semi-modular. For the cooler, it's some kind of Corsair 240 AIO, and the most important part for gaming is right here, the Asus Strix GTX 970. He also left all his drives in here, so there's 2 SSDs. You can see one right here, 860 EVO 500 gig, another one on this drive caddy, as well as a 1TB spinning mechanical drive. This case is the Rosewell Rise Full Tower, I believe it's called. Very much reminiscent of the time it came out, around 2014. No tempered glass, acrylic side panel. Everything in this build is from around that 2014 time frame, but surprising, a lot of this still fetches for a decent amount in the used market. Like the motherboard, the Asus Z97A in here has some sold listings on eBay recently around $80 to $90. And 4790Ks on eBay have sold for around like $60 recently. Despite being around 10 years old, the parts are still moving at decently high prices in the secondhand market. I don't think those prices are worth it, but people out here are still paying for these, so I guess. I'll show on the screen the estimated values of everything in here in used parts, and some of them, because they're so old, I kind of have to pull a number out of thin air, but this should be fairly representative of functioning components regardless of their age. So with the specs out of the way, now let's take a look at the build itself. Taking a look in the main chamber, James actually did a pretty decent job with regards to dusting the PC. It's not completely dust free, but I mean, if you take a look at the motherboard, which, I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense that it's a vertically mounted component that no dust really falls on it. But even looking at the case fans and the GPU and things like that, there is dust on any of the horizontal laying down surfaces. There's some on the AIO tubing, but this is not like super caked on like fluffy dust, right? If you look at other posts about 10-year-old PCs that have never been dusted, you'll know exactly what those look like. And in comparison, this is relatively clean. I have no idea where this could have come from. But why am I touching this with my bare hands? Oh, well, too late now. I should probably put on gloves. I'll probably do that when I start cleaning it because the alcohol can dry out my skin. But look at the direction of the fan. And this power supply strap. This is interesting. Oh, look at that dust flying off. I'm guessing just in case these 4 screws in the back don't hold up, this, you know, provides more of a point of securing it down. It does block the fan a little bit because of the way that this was installed. So the usually cases have ventilation on the bottom, which this one does, but James installed this with the fan up, which is probably not ideal because it's sharing the same, you know, warm air. Actually, it would just be warm air produced from the graphics card, because warm air produced by the CPU is going to leave and exit the AIO. The GPU is sagging quite a bit. This is what the sag is looking like. Another thing I'm noticing is the way that the fan blades curve. This is actually set up in the rear as intake, and if we look at the front, this, well, we've got mix and match fans here. I don't know where this fan would have come from. This is a single, out of all the fans in the case, this is a single Cooler Master fan. So we've got the intake, air's coming in the back, and we've got exhaust for all 3 fans going out the front. And then at the top, we have exhaust through the AIO with the 2 Corsair fans. I can turn this on just to show it real quick. It's not even plugged in. What am I doing? I need to plug it in real fast. Oof, one of the fans is making quite a bit of noise. Can you hear that? Yeah, there's nothing making contact with any of the fans. All these fans are just, let me show you. All these fans are just the Rosewell, I'm assuming the stock fans. So they're the same as this one. These Corsair fans are actually, they have built-in LEDs in them, so it's kind of hard to tell because this build also has LED strips. These are just single color strips. Back in 2014, when you had to pick your single color LEDs, and then you kind of stuck with that theme, which in terms of color matching, we got blue strips, blue fans, and then red memory, and then the motherboard itself, I don't know, what is this, kind of like a tan, bronzish color with a brown PCB. Let's take a look at the back side in terms of cable management. It's pretty clean, especially given that this case is not dual chamber and it's not separated by a power supply basement. You only have so much room to work back here, even down here to where the power supply is. But there are the 2 cutouts, and for the most part, I would say this is pretty clean. Overall, the build is in good working condition. There was no problems, at least no known problems, when it was handed over to me. So the first thing I want to do is clean it up. I'll start with dusting it first outside, and then I'll take it apart and clean all the components individually, as well as repaste the CPU and the GPU. I don't know if they were ever re-thermal pasted or if that's the original one, but we'll see. So yeah, let's get to it. Should have worn PPE. So I've gotten as much as I can get off, all the big stuff anyways, but the rest of it, it's not going to come off. Like you can see there's still dust there, but doing that's not going to do anything. It just, the rest needs to be wiped down now. So time to disassemble. And I'm going to do it while this is standing up because I really do not want to set up my overhead camera right now. So I just have to be careful taking everything off, but I should be able to do it. I don't know what just gave me that. Oh, okay. So apparently this rubber on the grommets for the back tray where the wires go through, they're so old that they're starting to disintegrate and leaving marks all over my hand. This is not just like dirt and dust and stuff. This is from disintegrating rubber because of how old it is on this case. I totally forgot to put my gloves on as I'm handling all these parts and now taking it out to get ready for cleaning. So I need to go do that real quick. You know, I bought these green latex gloves for the purposes of doing stuff like this, but I always forget to use it because I'm just used to just handling the parts and then washing the hands afterwards. So here's the thermal paste. It does look to still be, yeah, still wet. It's not completely dried and caked up. And last but not least, the motherboard. So I've got some isopropyl alcohol, some Q-tips for the tight spaces, but most of the cleaning I usually do with like a toothbrush head and then with the rag as well. That screw sticker is still intact, so unless he put a new one on, I don't think he ever took this apart to repaste. Oh yeah, this is pretty dry. This is me rubbing it, and it's pretty much not moving. Take a look at the thermal paste on this side. Again, like, I don't know how else I can show it any better how dry this is, but yeah. This will benefit from a repasting for sure. There we go. Show you what that looks like. Hello. So the parts are all clean now, but I'm not sure if you noticed, I did not clean this case. And the reason is because the parts are not going to go back into this. I'm going to end up recycling this or giving it away on OfferUp or something like that. Someone can get use out of this case. But the plan is to eventually find a good home for this build. So whoever gets this next, I do want them to get something that looks a bit nicer. So what we're going to use is actually right here. And it's going to be a case that was sent over by Fantex. This is the Fantex XT Pro. I've never built in this before. There's so many cases out there that I've never used. So any chance I can get to use a new one, I will. Companies are always trying to send me cases. I have way more in my backlog that I need to get through. So any chance that I can get to use them, I will. They also sent over some fans. So we've got some actual adjustable RGB fans here. This can now have adjustable RGB and set to whatever colors or rainbow, as opposed to just a single LED color that it had before. So yeah, let's get to building. build is looking a lot cleaner now, and the new case definitely helps. Alongside that though, I added some small touches to tie the aesthetics together, like the swapping out of the blue LED fans that were on the AIO radiator. I just swapped them out with neutral color ones I had laying around that were pulled a while ago from a dead AIO. This way, whatever color the front RGB fans are set to, they won't clash. I also added an anti-sag stick for the graphics card. I bought a bunch of these for like $3 a piece to have on hand for use cases like this, and it definitely makes a difference in keeping the card horizontal. The Strix GTX 970 isn't even that big of a card, but all those years of sagging was definitely showing. And the last thing I added was a short cable extension to the ATX 24 pin connector. I don't know why Corsair decided on this power supply model to give it all black cables on the PCIe and EPS cables, but then ketchup and mustard on the 24 pin. But this is an easy solution to save me from having to color it black with a permanent marker or spray painting it. Now for the fun part, the benchmarks. To squeeze out a little bit of extra performance given the uphill battle that these parts have, I did overclock a little bit. I have the 4790K running at 4.8 GHz at 1.3 volts. The GTX 970 is running an extra 150 MHz overclock on the core and 300 MHz on the VRAM, and the 16 GB of Patriot Viper memory is running its 2133 MHz XMP. Everything was tested at 1080p, but some of the titles, the newer ones, I did use FSR and even frame generation sometimes. So for those ones, I'll show the native results alongside the enhanced results. So yeah, let's check out how the system did. For a 10-year-old PC, I think those results are pretty good. 10 years feels like so long ago. Think about what the world was like in 2014, what YouTube was like. My channel wasn't even around and wouldn't exist for about another year. I was in a completely different stage in my life. I had just started dating my now wife. I was renting a room in a 5-bedroom house with my college friends post-college, and this is what my PC looked like at the time. We often hear that tech and electronics advances so fast and have these fantasies of what it would look like, like a decade from now. And well, these parts are from a time period in the opposite direction, going backwards in time a decade, and to be able to still remain even a little bit relevant today, I think that's pretty awesome. Sure, on some games this build needed help from resolution scaling and frame generation, but I think that's reasonable. I don't think there's much ground to stand on complaining that decade-old parts are struggling and need help from some of the newer tech on some of the newest games. There are some limitations though, like in Final Fantasy 16, one of the newest titles I tested, even though the frame rate increased with each feature enabled, it was still unplayable because Final Fantasy specifically ties the gameplay speed to the frame rate for some reason. So when the frame rate is below 60 FPS, the game plays as if it were in slow motion, which was a pretty horrible experience. But on the other hand, Last of Us and Cyberpunk definitely benefited from these settings turned on, and being non-competitive, story-driven single-player games, I think the trade-off of higher input latency for smoother gameplay say is worth it. But alright, that's gonna be it for this video. I always love revisiting old hardware. I know I usually approach it with the glass half full perspective, and that's not because I want to show for any of these companies or anything like that. Modern day Nvidia and Intel don't care that I'm praising their 10-year-old hardware. They're not throwing money at me for doing so. I'm just genuinely impressed that I can still play games on hardware that a lot of people would probably consider obsolete. You think about all the new hardware releases nowadays, you know, the complaining that you hear that it can't do this, it can't do that, it only gets this many frames, it only has this much VRAM, and I'm over here like, dang, we got 3.5 gigs of VRAM in this thing. How is this even able to run some of these newer games at all, let alone be actually playable? You'd expect it to be like a slideshow of a gaming experience, but it's not. The i7-4790K and GTX 970 were very popular and well-liked parts in their prime, and I'm sure some of you out there owned them at some point in time, so sound off in the comments if you did. I also like to survey viewers to see who is still using any of the parts featured in the video, like right now today. As we just saw, they're still very usable, so I'm sure there's plenty of you out there who are still trucking along with them, or maybe you've upgraded and you've thrown them into like secondary rigs for your kids or your little brother or cousin or something. But yeah, let me know down in the comments, as well as any other thoughts you may have on the video overall. I love seeing people still proudly repping their old parts and getting every last bit of usage out of them. We gotta curb that e-waste, right? But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed and found this video either useful or entertaining in one way or another. I want to thank you all as always for watching and for continuing to support the channel. Shout out to the channel members as always for the above and beyond support. Be safe out there, and I'll see you all down in the comments as well as next stream and or video. Bye.